Question 4. Research. I use mainly the internet and YouTube for the research stage, looking at websites and poster conventions. I looked at the Shank website and the Green Street one to see what typical conventions were used to make social realism marketing products. YouTube was used to watch through all the trailers, including Shank, Kidulthood, 4321, Green Street and Ill Manners. I got a feel of what the social realism genre would be about and how these sorts of trailers and posters are made. I was introduced to the WordPress blog, which would become the medium of my work, which would be shown on. I began using this blog regularly to post and update all my coursework for this year. I also briefly looked at the horror genre but decided against it as it didn't interest me enough to base my project on it. Planning. For the planning, I used media technologies such as the internet and Google to search for films and film genres I would like to make. I also used YouTube to find trailers and look at other videos related to these films. I used the internet to look at film websites and posters, and I used Photoshop to create mood boards and other pieces of planning like my initial ideas. Photoshop became a tool that I used to create the majority of this project. I used websites such as defont.com to find a font I could use as my title for my cross-media package. The iMac was pivotal throughout the whole project, as it had every program I used, and it also had a photo booth which could make focus groups in the planning stage. I used a digital SLR camera to take my images for planning and my eventual products. I used a scanner to scan my documents, storyboards and treatment sheets, and eventually put them on my WordPress blog. I used WordPress heavily at this stage because it began to house my catalogue of planning. I began using GarageBand but eventually gave up as I wanted to find a more original soundtrack opposed to my classmates. Therefore I found a website which gave away urban music with no licensing and downloaded it. Construction. The construction of my poster and website was solely on Photoshop CS3, which I would use to edit pictures and lay out both of the ancillary texts. A digital camera was used to film my trailer and all of its shots, which came with a tripod which I fixed the camera onto to record. When I recorded the footage, it loaded it onto the Final Cut Pro, which is an editing program where I created my trailer. This was the first time using this program and I struggled at first. However, after a while I became adept at using the software and eventually began to understand how it all worked. I used the dictaphone to record the voiceover on my trailer. This wasn't the first time I used one, so I knew how to record with it. I had to convert the files to MP3 and import them onto the iMac and Final Cut. I used YouTube to try and correspond aspects of my trailer with the trailers I analysed, Green Street and Shank. Evaluation. For my evaluation, I've been using Final Cut Pro to make the videos, whilst recording my voiceover with a dictaphone. I have screen recorded with QuickTime Player to show what I was doing when I was making my trailer. I also took screen captures of certain things to correspond with what I'm saying. I used my iPhone to write down some questions, as it is easier to email it to myself rather than using my cellular device.